Hello, Year 2. It is history time again. And today we are looking at another great explorer. So last week was Ibn Battuta, who lots of us wouldn't have heard of. But this week is somebody I think a lot of you may well have heard of, Christopher Columbus. So today we're going to find out more about Christopher Columbus, and then you're going to write about the experiences of him in a message in a bottle or on a poster, and hopefully be able to answer a few questions correctly about him. So when did Christopher Columbus live? When do you think he might have lived? If we have a look at this timeline again from last week, we've got Ibn Battuta here, 1304 to 1369, so a very long time ago, that one. We've got Shakespeare, who was around in the Tudor period, around the 1500s. And then we whiz forward past the Victorian period to the 1900s. And of course, now this is the present. So where do you think he fits? Let's find out. Oops, sorry, let me just get rid of my laser. There you go. In between Ibn Battuta and Shakespeare. So 1451 to 1506. Quite a long time ago, we're talking 500 years ago. Christopher Columbus was born in Italy in 1451. His father was a wool merchant. So a merchant, remember, is somebody that is buying and selling things. He was born into a time period called the Renaissance, when a lot of people were building new ships to explore different parts of the world. Because remember, back then, lots of the world hadn't been mapped. People didn't know all the different countries and continents that existed. And Columbus's first trip on the sea was when he was only 13 years old. So only 6 or 7 years older than lots of you. Unbelievable. What did he do? Well, he lived at a time when people in Europe didn't know that the continents of North or South America even existed. He was quite a clever chap. He was self-taught in lots of things, in geography, history, astrology. He learnt to sail in wooden ships with sails. He learnt to find his way at sea by using the stars and the sun. And he went to live in Portugal and sold maps with his brothers. But he had a dream to travel west to go to China. Because in China, at the time, there was lots of exotic spices that were being sold for lots of money, and he believed he could go and make some money if he went over there. So if we have a look at the map of the world, remember, when we see it like this, the world has been rolled from its globe and squashed flat. So we're here, remember, Great Britain. Down here is Spain. This long, skinny boot bit here is Italy, where he was born. But over here, Portugal is where he settled. And he didn't want to go through Europe here, over the land down to India or China. Instead, he wanted to go by sea, and he wanted to go west. And he believed that if he sailed west this way, eventually he would land in India. So this bigger map shows us his first, second, third and fourth voyages. So the blue line here shows us where he went. So Portugal, on the edge of Spain. He set sail and he went past North Africa and he did a pit stop at the Canary Islands. Some of you might have been there, to Tenerife or Lanzarote. Then he continued across the Atlantic Ocean all the way over here until he got to what he thought was India. But in actual fact, he'd reached the Bahamas. He then went on to Cuba and then a few other islands before heading back home. And then he obviously did subsequent journeys over here. Okay, but let's move on. What did Christopher Columbus do? To follow his dream, he needed money. So the King and Queen of Spain gave him money to buy ships. He set sail on the 3rd of August, 1492, with 3 ships. And some of you might have heard a little rhyme that I was taught at school. In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Life on the ships. The men had no cabins to sleep in. The ship actually wasn't very big at all, about the same size as a sailing yacht you might see if you go on holiday. So everyone had to sleep on deck. The ships let water in all the time, and the men had to work pumps to keep the ships afloat. They were on a voyage into the unknown. They did not know where they would land. So can you imagine how you would feel? Very young, you're on a ship, no proper beds, it's probably cold and wet, and you're going through stormy seas. You're tired and hungry, eating very boring food. You're certainly not going to be eating a balanced diet like we talked about in science. So yes, I'd imagine you'd feel pretty terrified, not to mention seasick, homesick, and just wondering where on earth you were going to land. Setting sail. Christopher Columbus used a compass to help him find his way. And we all know a little rhyme to remember the points on a compass. Never eat shredded wheat. Some of you came up with some different ones, didn't you? North, east, south, west. The trip took them longer than expected, and they got scared. They couldn't find no land. All they could see was the ocean, and they were running out of food and water. But after 36 days, one man spotted an island. It was in the Bahamas. So just close your eyes and really try to imagine how you would feel at sea all day. How would you feel when you finally saw land? Perhaps some of you have been on a big ship before and you might have felt a little bit seasick. But imagine that for days on end. And imagine the elation, the excitement when you actually see land. You perhaps wouldn't believe your eyes. Now there's a little clip here from Horrible Histories, which you can click on and watch all about Christopher Columbus. Let's go. Oh, I can't get rid of that. So I will let you click on that to watch that. Christopher Columbus sailed onto Cuba and discovered new lands, and they called it the New World. Native Americans lived on the islands, but Christopher Columbus called them Indians because he thought he'd landed in the Indies. So that is why we call the Bahamas and the islands around there the West Indies. So some interesting facts to remember. Christopher Columbus's biggest ship was less than 23 meters long. So like I said, that's like a sailing yacht, a small sailing yacht that you might go on a holiday. Before Christopher Columbus had been to America, no one in Europe had ever tried a tomato or a potato before. Can you believe that? No tomato soup, no chips. The sailors ate stew made from salt, meat, and bones. Yuck. Christopher Columbus's big problem. On Christmas night of 1492, one of his ships hit a reef and it damaged the ship beyond repair. He took the other 2 ships home, leaving 40 men behind. He took some Native Americans home with him, and when he went back to collect his other men, they were all dead. Christopher Columbus sailed to America in 1502 for the 4th time, still hoping he would finally get to China. But instead, he ended up in Central America. His ships had holes in them, so he had to wait a whole year to sail home. And when he got home, he was very ill and died in 1506. So the important thing to remember is that Christopher Columbus did not discover America, as lots of people say he did. But he started regular contact between Europe and America, because the Vikings had actually landed in America 500 years before this, but Columbus didn't know. Poor old Christopher Columbus. So a quick little quiz for you. Let's see how much you remember. What was Christopher Columbus famous for? What country did he want to visit? And what countries did he actually find? Who gave Columbus the money to go on his voyage? And what things did he bring back to Europe? So I'm sure all of you were listening carefully and you should know the answers to those. So what you're going to do is write a message in a bottle as your activity. On his return to Spain following the first voyage to the New World, Columbus's ship entered a severe storm and he threw a report of what they had discovered as a message to the Queen of Spain in a sealed bottle that he threw into the sea. In fact, Columbus survived, and so the message was never found. But what do you think he wrote in that message? Have a think about it. This is the template that I will attach to this presentation for you to use. You don't have to use this, you can make your own if you like. But you might want to start it off with something like, Dear Queen of Spain, I wanted to write to you to tell you about my amazing journey to discover new lands. Things that you need to include would be where you sailed and what the people were like. Use your imagination. Think about what you saw. Did you see strange animals, fish, or even mermaids? How you felt, homesick, seasick, hungry, bored, scared, and what you brought back. Tomatoes, potatoes. Add in any other details that you like, and I'll be really, really pleased to see those. Good luck, everybody.